country is thinking.
That is
They're,
a
you
good
know,
point. I would agree with that. Yes,
yeah, they're
no
in
doubt.
their bubbles, and unless they start listening to the rest of the country, they don't really understand the national picture.
Yeah, but they also don't understand their own limitations. Like Clint Eastwood said, a man has to know his limitations. Well, a person has to know their limitations. And
Yes.
de Blasio, even Kamala running for president. Really? You've done nothing. You were appointed your seat as a senator. You've done nothing, you know? You've always been rubber stamped. These people, and Bernie, he didn't have a job till he was 40. I think his first job was writing porn for some Penthouse magazine or something. Amazing. Speaking of amazing in terms of the Biden administration, there's growing and increasingly growing consensus that a recession is coming. In fact, the Fed just hiked interest rates by 0.5, which is quite a hefty margin, and that's not the last of it. Um, Looking at, with Biden's at 38, I mean, on average in approval, a recession, is that like the end, or please help me?
Well, again, GDP came out last week that first quarter the economy shrunk 1.4%. Now, the traditional definition of a recession is 2 quarters of shrinking. So if we get a second quarter of this, that's a recession. There have been a number of financial people coming out trying to cover for the Biden administration, going, well, that's not really accurate anymore. We need to include other factors. It's like, no, that's been the definition. It's still the definition.
It's still the
And
definition, but regardless of the definition, if you do the math and you look at the inflation rate, the Fed's good. This is not the first or only interest rate hike. Interest rates has, and this is actually Biden's own economic advisor, Gillespie or whatever his name is. I believe that's his name. Anyway, the point is interest rates have to meet or at least come close to the inflation rate. We've been addicted to zero interest for at least 20
yes,
years now. When you're looking at a car, now you're going to have to pay 8%, 7%. That's a recession. People are not
yeah,
to buy.
the interest rates are going to go up. It was raised by half a point today, which is the first time it's been raised by half a point since 2000. They've
And by the way, what
already,
is the Fed? Are they like on acid or something? A little slow to the draw. I mean, you give
well,
a college student in economics know
the
better
Fed is,
start raising interest rates with this recession because it's not transitory, it's real.
the Fed has always historically been slow on the draw. They are very reactive. And part of that is because their tools are limited. But in this case, a lot of it was that they went so far down to help during the 2009 recession, and then again in the self created recession of the pandemic, that now they're stuck with no tools. So they're unwinding their purchases of securities. They've raised interest rates half a point today. It is expected they will raise another half point in at the next meeting and another half point at the following meeting. There is no way that can happen, and by no before election day we don't get pushed into a recession, given that we've already had the 1 quarter of
I
shrinkage.
concur with that 1,000%. And who cares about the technical definition when people are already paying uh, you know, uh, 3 times as much for a gallon of gas. Meat's gone up. This is like welcome. Get your leisure suits out because this is the 1970s reincarnated. It doesn't care. No one cares about the technical definition of something.
Right.
It's going to have a huge
it's
impact.
it's about how it feels, and the fact of the matter is the general public feels this every time they go shopping for food, every time they fill up their cars. You can't hide this because it's part of the everyday landscape. And now you've had diesel fuel hit record highs. Now, most people go, well, I don't use diesel fuel. Why should I care about that? That's what fuels the trucks that brings all of the groceries to the supermarket, which helps push up the price of everything you're buying.
Yes, I think another interesting, but we already talked about this in terms of Joe Biden's dementia. As these crises and the economic crisis becomes more acute, he's going to have more press conferences, and think that puts further fuel on the fire. People are going to obviously understand this person's not in charge.
Well,
Speaking of someone that is in charge, Donald Trump endorsed J.D. Vance in Ohio. He's now 22-0. He's a kingmaker.
yeah, 22 Republican candidates endorsed by Donald Trump won their primaries. Now, in contrast to this, the White House has announced that Biden is going to be going on the road and supporting Democratic candidates. And the only people excited about Biden supporting Democratic candidates are the Republicans.
Of course. Oh my God. I mean, you'd say I have to have my oil changed to get out of that meeting. I mean,
Right.
like Stacey Abrams did. I don't know what she had. She had to go to motor vehicles or something. No, you do not want to be on the same stage with Lunch Pail Joe, by the way, who's now has a real estate value of $10 million, 2 houses. How does that happen? Joe Lunch Pail, Mr. Amtrak, now has 2 houses valued at over $10 million.
Yeah, I mean
That must be the new math.
that's what goes on when you're a congressperson, when you're a senator. It just came out that 2 days before Joe Biden signed a bill promoting electric cars, Nancy Pelosi bought Tesla stock. Now, you
There
think
you go.
she didn't know that he was going to sign this? I mean, come on.
No, she's a financial genius.
Oh,
It
of
just happened
course.
that she went to Congress worth, I don't know, $200,000, and now she's worth, well, who knows, 30 million, 10 million, who cares?
Something like
Yeah,
that.
no,
Yeah.
she's a genius at investing. Someone that was be both an incapable of working at a Jiffy Lube are now multimillionaires, and then Biden has the audacity to talk about, again, rambling on about it's for millionaires, and stop it, Joe Lunch Pail. Lastly, the tolerant left literally attacked Dave Chapelle on his comedy tour called Netflix is a Joke, and someone attacked him.
Yeah, Netflix is a Joke is a comedy festival that is going on all over Los Angeles. Dave Chappelle was appearing at the Hollywood Bowl, and people a person rushed the stage to attack him. This is the folks that are yelling how we need to be tolerant of transgender and tolerant of alternative lifestyles, but they're not tolerant of Dave Chappelle.
Well, they tried to shut him
let's
down
face it.
with that very message when about a year ago or 2 years ago, time flies.
Yep.
He had a stand-up routine basically saying you could say the N-word, but he goes, the alphabet? No, your ass is grass. And
Exactly.
Practically disbarred.
And this just goes to show the hypocrisy of the far left, because they want you to be tolerant of their viewpoints, but they're not willing to listen to anybody else's. And, again, I talked about this back when Dave Chappelle's last Netflix special aired. If you actually watch the special, there is nothing offensive about it. He talks about his transgender friend who committed suicide because she was hounded by the transgender community.
Yeah,
This
but
is not.
that's the left. That's what we talked about with the abortion debate. It's never based on fact. It's just social media riling them up, the mainstream. And there's nothing like the Virginia rallies when Trump took office and he was a racist. Half the people didn't know anything about Trump, and they just blindly follow and go go protest and then have to go to safe rooms.
And that's why the left made such a big deal about Elon Musk buying Twitter, because now they're going to have to confront people who are arguing the other side instead of simply having them canceled. And
maybe having some facts at their disposal.
Right. And that's how discourse works. If you have a point of view and somebody else has an opposing point of view, you put facts in front of them. You debate them using the truth. But that's too difficult for the far left. That's why they just want people canceled.
Well, hopefully we will not be canceled, and we'll move on and continue our progress, unlike CNN Plus. So, very good episode, Dr. Lopkin. And again, I like that suggestion box that our listeners can access if they'd like to contribute, correct?
Yes, if you'd like the topic that we discuss, want your opinion heard about the topic, you can go to radio.com/act and know. And of course, catch it so radio at xvadio.com website, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.
Very interesting, very great. And by the way, you didn't get it yet, but I did see it in some correspondence. I think Zucker just sent you his resume. He wants to work for Carnivore Radio. All right, take care, Dr. Lopkin.
We'll see you next time.